RWBY Volume 7, Chapter 11, Gravity, has officially released, so let me break it down for you. So the episode picks up right where the last one left off, the Chad Ironwood versus Watts. They carry out a run-and-gun battle where Watts is surprisingly nimble, as well as durable enough to take hits from a man significantly larger than himself. He spends pretty much all of it practicing his count impression just in case this job doesn't work out. But all that counting doesn't do him any good because he runs out of bullets. But it's okay, he manhandles Ironwood and traps his arm in some hard light technology, leaving him trapped. Ironwood is oddly allowed to pull himself through this tech, but it'll come at the cost of his arm. So it's checkmate. Watts goes off to do whatever his plan is, but Ironwood, being the absolute Giga Chad that he is, walks into the room, whips his massive dick on the table, and says bask in all of its goddamn glory. And he just pulls his arm out, cause he doesn't give a fuck. And just like that, he wins. This was a good moment. This was a really badass moment which showed Ironwood's conviction and the sacrifices he's willing to make. I did think it really odd that Watts' gotcha moment was Ironwood would have to get more robot parts. Like, Ironwood has never struggled with his humanity. He's never been like, am I becoming more man than machine? Ironwood literally has never seemed to care or honestly even mention that he's got a lot of robot parts. But in terms of the scene as a whole, the Ironwood part obviously was awesome. Like, this in its own way is a defining character moment for Ironwood because it does show the lengths he is willing to go to. He put his money where his mouth is. He's not bluffing to everyone. If he truly didn't care, he'd have allowed Watts to get away with his plan because he'd have valued himself more. So this moment was a character-defining moment for him. In terms of the fight, it was pretty meh, in my opinion. The constant cat-and-mouse game where Ironwood is chasing Watts wasn't the most entertaining, plus the fact that you usually don't expect a scientist/engineer to go toe-to-toe with the military general. The only other thing that I really didn't like about the fight was Watts' counting. Like, the moment Watts fired a bullet and said 20, it was pretty apparent that he was counting his bullets. But the inclusion of every number in between, that seemed unnecessary and was usually ruining the flow of the scene for me. It just broke whatever rhythm it started to get. Meanwhile, in an alley somewhere, Tyrion was also left at the edge of a cliffhanger fight with Crow, Clover, and Robin. This fight isn't as great and results in Tyrion losing. As simple as that. So Ironwood yoinks Watts' briefcase cause it's his now, and manages to bandage his arm up and get it in a sling before returning back to his office. He spots a chess piece on his desk like the one at Beacon, and so he calls an emergency family meeting. He sends Winter off to get the Maiden Powers, where Cinder is ominously looking out a window, tracking her cause But everyone gathers, and Ironwood's greatest fear is becoming a reality. He begins freaking out, but after the characters sort of not really try to calm him down, it all comes crashing down. The truth, or should I say lack thereof, between Team RWBY has caused them to be deemed untrustworthy. But as this conversation is at its boiling point, the Seer Grim emerges from Watts' bag, and Salem Skypes in with some drama. RWBY tries her patented speech no jutsu technique, but it's not effective. Salem's mere mention of Summer is super effective, and RWBY falls down and cries. So just like that, Salem dismantles everything the season worked so hard to do. The trust gone, the plan shattered, the relationship's not a thing. So she Omega lulls her way out of the room and probably just awkwardly sits in her castle alone waiting for the next thing to do. Because of this, Ironwood devises a new plan. Screw Amity going to space, we're taking Atlas to space. But Team RWBY, literally doing nothing new, side against him. So Ironwood leaves the room, setting up for the Aesops to versus Team RWBY. Phew! That was a lot of things I had to recap. God, where do I begin? Let's start with Ironwood first, since I was talking about him earlier. God, is this man just absolutely carrying this whole volume, it's unreal. This is what an absolute alpha specimen looks like, people. The top scientists at Atlas have been studying him, and they just can't figure it out. The gods are looking down, shaking in their boots, having allowed evolution to create such a man. It is so great that Ironwood is flawed, and that's what makes him such a great character. I don't think people get that being wrong is what makes good characters. You don't have to be right all of the time like Team RWBY always is. Being wrong and making misjudgments is something that the good guys so rarely do that it's so goddamn euphoric to see. Don't get me wrong, Team RWBY's holier-than-thou attitude is still as high as ever, and it doesn't seem like anything will knock them off their high horse. But fuck it, because this is Ironwood's volume. In terms of his plan, it's stupid, obviously. But I think the thing I hate the most about it is that it's so ridiculous, it breaks my suspension of disbelief. There's 2 episodes left, and you're floating the idea that by the time the finale rolls around, I'm gonna be staring at Ironwood, Winter, Penny, Team Funky, and whoever else is on Atlas, be staring down on Remnant from space. Like, the idea is so far out there that there's absolutely no scenario where I see that possibility becoming a reality. And that's really the thing I hate most about the plan. Like, they have to keep the staff and lamp away from Salem, but is the logical step to float Atlas into space? The most logical solution would be to use the staff and move Atlas, I don't know, a couple miles to the left, anywhere around Mantle. There's unironically miles of free space to just ground Atlas. Because why does Atlas have to be in the sky in the first place? Wouldn't it theoretically be colder because it's in the sky? Just put Atlas on the ground. I know it was Ozpin's engineering design which decided to float Atlas, but I don't know if they've caught on. Ozpin's engineering kinda sucks. After the whole CCT, one tower goes down, they all go down, they should have thrown all of his creations out the window. So, you should just ground Atlas, put the staff on Amity, use that to float the arena to space, and use all that dust you were planning to launch Amity with in the first place, and create another smaller pod just to launch the Staff of Creation into the depths of space, where literally no one can find it. That's the more logical plan there. But instead, we've got an unbelievable scenario which was used to paint Ironwood as the bad guy so Team RWBY can virtue signal their way to success yet again. I would love nothing more than to feel like the Aesops could win, but quite frankly, we haven't spent enough time with them for me to believe they could. We had a few very brief montages, but that was not nearly enough time to build them up as characters. Now say for example, if Penny was in the room and was forced to fight Team RWBY, that's a different story that can yield one or another result. Because Penny has been built up and is sort of a mainstay in the series, that you can't very easily predict the outcome. But for all the Aesops, they could do anything. The only one of Team RWBY who's almost certain to lose if it's a 1 versus 1 scenario is Weiss, because she unironically, no joke, never has won a single 1 versus 1 against another human being in the history of this show. But Weiss is almost certain to win because she has to talk to Winter. Which, speaking of Winter, why was Weiss so shocked when Ironwood told her that he sent Winter to get the Maiden Powers? Much like last episode, with telling the people about Salem, he told Weiss that he intended for Winter to get the Maiden Powers, and Weiss spent a whole episode talking to her sister about this exact thing. Why are the characters always so shocked when Ironwood tells them that he's executing part of the plan that they were briefed on in like episode 2? I don't know. I think the worst thing this volume could do right now is play Ironwood like he's the villain, and have RWBY motivational speech no jutsu the Aesops into turning against Ironwood. I think that's the worst thing it could do because Ironwood isn't the bad guy, but he's willing to let all the people of Mantle die. Well, like the Aesops said, that's war. This is a battle, but Ironwood, being a military leader, is trying to win the war. Ironwood is not the bad guy. Ironwood all of a sudden did not become the villain. And I think the best thing the show could do is come up with some sort of reason to convince him another plan would be better. What'll genuinely impress me and get me to maybe start liking some of the main characters again is if they understand what Ironwood is doing. Because never have the main characters gone, I understand the point of view I'm opposing. I get it. I understand why they're doing it. It's always a, I'm right, you are wrong, and it makes the characters very unlikable. Summer is a thing, again. RWBY has flashbacks or something about her. Does RWBY even have memories of Summer? Didn't she die when she was like a very small child or something? I don't know, this show literally never given any sort of details or backstory with her, so I'm staring at a blank piece of paper waiting for the show to do anything with Summer Rose at any point during her life. Then there was Salem. She had a pretty cool appearance, managing to, in the span of quite possibly less than a minute, destroy everything the characters worked to build. It was a cool appearance, very daunting, very threatening. But before I continue with Salem, I must first bring up Cinder. For fuck's sake, get rid of her. As time keeps going on, I've never slowly began to agree more with the idea that she should have died at the end of Volume 5. Her character served no purpose, her search for power proved frivolous, and it's what got her killed. But she returned, and is only becoming more to me like how I would describe what Bulk and Skull are to Power Rangers. Just like she's there on her own journey, thinking she's doing something, but she's not. But the reason I brought Cinder up with Salem is because these two characters are kinda the same. The incredibly calm voice, trying to be a mastermind, messing with the heads of the protagonists. But the difference between Cinder and Salem is that Salem is good, and is more interesting, and hasn't sucked for 7 years, and can act. I think you get the point. Cinder is a hindrance on the plot because they're not making her relevant. Sure, if she was a constant where we were given backstory and motivation, and you know, all the things that characters need to be interesting, then it would be fine. But just like last season, she's just here, eating up screen time, taking away from the thing that is way more interesting. And it's been that way for 7 years because she hasn't done anything. I feel bad that Neo has been glued to Cinder, I really do. Anyway, what's to happen with the Maiden? Who knows? Is it gonna kill Winter like with Pyrrha's situation, or is it gonna keep her alive like with Cinder? I was wondering what would happen if Neo was disguised as someone and then killed the Maiden. Would the powers go to Neo, or the person she was disguised as? I don't know, food for thought. Oh yeah, Oscar was also kidnapped, or was he? In reality, he's probably just out getting some new clothes. In the end, this episode was really good. The tone pretty much all of the scenes went for were nailed. It felt like there was tension. The drama was neat. Certain characters, Ironwood, absolutely are carrying the whole thing. And it feels like the season has actually built up to this final act. It was probably the best episode in the volume because despite all of the things it was doing, nothing really fell flat on its face. Moral of the episode is Ironwood could fuck your mom if you wanted.